Welcome back to the MMA Careers Podcast, episode number 103. Now, after what was, in my eyes, I think many people's eyes, predictable fight night on Saturday, there was a bit of specific news we got regarding the fighter from a card just a week prior, and that was, of course, the King of Rio, Jose Aldo Jr., who has officially cemented his retirement following putting his gloves down in the octagon, and he reaffirmed that he's definitely not coming back, which is a big thing considering his sort of flirting with retirement in the past. In fact, he did, call a retirement before and was inducted into the Hall of Fame, but now it seems a lot more finalized. And with that, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because we had a little discussion on my stream about where he ranks in the featherweight all-time list. And this ended up being a way bigger and more heated debate with my stream chat than I ever thought it would be. And usually we agree on most topics when it comes to mixed martial arts, but I feel like I have to pose you the question, where does he rank all-time in the featherweight GOAT list? Because in my opinion, he's interchangeable with Volkanovski, but I'm going to put him at number one for argument's sake. But I had some people in my chat debating that Holloway was above him, and I forever could not understand that opinion. But I would love to hear your thoughts before we chat some wider news and creator topics.
I said Jose Aldo for a few times, and then I got corrected to Jose Aldo.
Is it really? Is it really? Okay. I mean,
I believe so.
You might. I've never known. I think it sounds more Brazilian to say Jose, doesn't it? Or maybe it's not. I don't know. Regardless, his legacy stands as one of the greatest of all time. In my eyes, I think on the Mount Rushmore of MMA, let alone at the top of the featherweight division. But what's your 2 cents?
I think when you retire at an older age, recency bias only goes as far as your last few performances, which is kind of crazy, right? Because if you actually go back and have a look at his last few fights, maybe not his last fight, not the best example, but at least his last few before that, competing with the very best, bearing in mind that he, quote-unquote, retired after the loss against Merab Dvalishvili, at least stepped away from MMA. That was the champion. He went on to capture gold the next fight or the fight after that.
Close fight too, that was.
A draw, I would say. Almost a draw. No damage. And actually not any control time on the mat. Just a weird fight where it was just very stale.
Not a fun fight. Yeah.
So the reason I say that is because it's kind of astonishing to think that he's been competing for what? Over 2 decades?
2004 was his debut. We were looking at this yesterday. Yeah. 21 years.
Years. Years. That is incredible. And I say this a lot, but when you go into the training rooms and when you are very close to people that train or compete at any level, not at UFC championship caliber level, at any professional level whatsoever, just watching the wear and tear on the body in one session, just one session, that is it. Not years, not decades, just one session. Then to think of the compound interest of all of the training, all of the camps, all of the preparation, all of the media, and then to do all of that at the highest level, it kind of comes back to the question of what's factored in. Is it performances? Is it caliber of opponent? Is it longevity? Is it how long were you at the pinnacle for? Because if you're going to ask that question, he was at the pinnacle indefinitely. He got to the top as basically a teenager, if not a teenager, and then just sustained that level. Went unbeaten for a decade, when it was the WEC, where those weight classes were the most stacked as well. And then goes into the UFC, captures gold, and then fights the very best. And until very recently, only lost to champions. So if I were to flip this to you, you say it's top, and I say that's your point of view. But what are you factoring into that?
This is the point I make. I think everyone's opinions on what you weigh, usually this is the debate when you talk about the greatest of all time, right? But the factors still stand. It depends on what you value more. As you said, longevity, skill set of opponents, dominating, the manner of victory, should I say. So how you go about your victories. All of these come into play. I think it's a sum of its parts kind of topic, And with Aldo, longevity is probably the most important factor. And that's such a hard thing to do, to stay at this top level and sustain as you get older. Obviously, there's no secret. As you probably reach, particularly in the lighter weight classes, around 33, 34, you start to tail off naturally. And that was the case for Aldo, but he's proven, even moving down a weight class to bantamweight, that he can still hang with the very best, as we saw against Merab Dvalishvili, and that win over Jonathan Martinez, which was seriously impressive. And I think we both picked Martinez at the time when we were discussing our predictions for that one. I could be wrong, but I certainly did, and was more than happy to be proven wrong. So longevity automatically puts him at number one over any of these guys. Obviously, the jury's still out with Max Holloway's career, who's still fighting, and Volkanovski, who is also, of course, still fighting, and is the featherweight champion of the world. So it's very close between the latter and Aldo, in my opinion, because when you look at resumes, I actually think they're pretty comparable overall in terms of top elite wins. And you talk about pure legacy and just, as I said, the amount of time Jose Aldo has been in this sport and done what he's done, I think he does probably pit Volkanovski for me, because people like to write off the WEC as if it doesn't count. But what I feel like a lot of people don't understand is that at this time, the lighter weight classes were not in the UFC. They weren't being officially represented. So when the WEC fully merged with the company, all of those WEC lighter weight champions got automatically promoted to UFC champions as well. So in my eyes, there's not much weight taken out of it just because it goes by the WEC namesake. So I value those wins just as much as I do his UFC title defenses as well. And with that in mind, I think that's why he's number one. If you just look at the record and just look at the amount of green in a row, it's absurd. And guys like Holloway, with all due respect, who was also one of the greats, just can't compare. And that just speaks to how good he was.
I don't know wholeheartedly off the top of my head, but aside from that Conor McGregor fight, did he ever get knocked out like that? I know against Holloway he got stopped, but knocked out.
Holloway, yeah. Out cold? I don't know. Yeah, against Holloway it was more of a cumulative beatdown. He got knocked down a couple of times and kind of just finished. The same with the Piotr Jan fight, with that horrendous late stoppage when he was fighting at bantamweight for that title shot. And that speaks volumes, isn't it? I mean, just to even bring that up, obviously he did lose that fight, but he managed to earn a bantamweight title shot against Piotr Jan, at that point in his career, way later on. Also a two-time featherweight champion, let's not forget, in beating Frankie Edgar at UFC 200. So, there's so many pointers that lead me to just believe that Aldo is number one. But Volkanovski, I'm very happy to make the argument for as well. And of course, we're huge fans of the man. So, I think one thing which is impressive that you have to mention as well is he's come into the sport as a pure striker for the most part. I know he actually started in jiu-jitsu, I believe, but he was never some guy rolling for submissions and threatening them throughout his career. Just was always a striker. So came in with a striking base, and throughout the evolution of the sport managed to keep up with the times, and more than that, trendsetted his own moves. Essentially, you look at takedown defense, I would say the greatest takedown defense of all time. I don't really know if that's too debatable. I don't think it is. I agree.
Because statistically it backs it up as well. He's the only fighter in UFC history to have 3 fights in a row with double-digit takedown attempts and to stuff all of them, which is insanity. Crazy. And you look at the weight classes he's doing that within, some of the best grapplers, or at least some of the most able fighters,
Did Merab even take him down?
No, he didn't.
I don't think he did. How crazy is that in hindsight?
Shots.
At the time we knew Merab was a good wrestler, right? But looking on to see what he's done in this sport, where he is at now, he's in that conversation of being the best bantamweight of all time. And yes, he might have beaten Jose Aldo, but it was never a convincing win in the slightest. It was, as you said, a bit of a neutral, stalemate, boring fight. And that's just testament to Aldo's takedown defense, because 90% of that fight was fought against the fence in the clinch.
And I do think it's super interesting. I'm freezing because I'm trying to think of a time where this was applicable to another fighter, but I just can't think of it. Everyone who faced him tried to nullify his skills up until his last ever fight. Usually when people get older, their skills diminish and then people can just face them on face value. Someone like Tony Ferguson's a good example, right? People would then just face Tony and they weren't too worried about the pressure. They weren't too worried about the chaos. They would just go face him on merit and they would look to take him out even in the striking. They would happily grapple with him. That was never the case. That was never really the case. People weren't really comfortable in these spots. But everyone who ever faced Jose Aldo always nullified the striking, or would try to nullify the striking, would try and keep him against the cage because they couldn't take him down, so they tried to pin him against the cage, and then they would just try and grapple because they didn't really want to strike with him either, because he's such a threat there. So not only was he had a style that could evolve with the sport, but also it just never really waned, which is super impressive. So to answer your question, yeah, I probably would have him at the top, to be perfectly honest, with all things considered. I think if you're going to look in regards to records, then sure, Alexander Volkanovski is probably going to be there. But if you're going to look a little bit more holistically...
There it is.
Then I would say, yeah, Jose Aldo's a fair point. So I think we can round off on agreement on that.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to just swing that back, just to propose another question in a similar vein, what does Volkanovski need to do to surpass him?
I think it's just a time commitment, really. The fact that I've got Jose Aldo there is just because of how long he did it at the top for. And Volk's been doing this for a while now. This is not new to him either. And then he goes away, suffers 2 losses and comes back. To me, things like that are more impressive. To the average MMA fan, they're always going to say, well, he got knocked out twice. And they'll just look at it from a very superficial level, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I understand that. But again, when you sort of spend time around the sport and you see how a knockout could affect someone mentally, you can see how it affects their training. You can see how it affects their day-to-day, how it can affect their family. People don't really think about these things. They just think, oh, they get knocked out in the sport and they don't really think of anything else. But they don't even really think of the smaller details about how this person could potentially feel like a shell of themselves and they're not comfortable going out in public because they feel like everyone's staring and laugh at them in the shop, and then they're being a little bit more reserved with their family, and then there's more friction within their relationships, and then they're not quite where they used to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and then they don't really want to go to training anymore, and when they do go to training they don't feel like they can train like they used. There's so many
Aldo more than
factors.
anything in that, can I say? I mean, he was probably on the receiving end of one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic knockout in the company's history when McGregor finished him at UFC. Was it one? I want to say it was 194. It's either 194 or 193. It's one of the two, and I always get it the wrong way around. And, you know, that is devastating. It can be devastating for probably a lesser fighter, right? But again, that's a testament to what Aldo's done in the sport. The fact that he was able to come back, and as I said, 2-time champion. And possibly could have been a 2-division champion if he surpassed Petr Yan. And obviously that didn't happen, but the fact he even got close to that is an achievement in itself in my eyes. But yeah, sorry, going back to Volkanovski.
Yeah, that's what I find impressive about him is he took that time off, came back after 35, by the way, which is not necessarily a curse. It is just a fact. It's just a fact. Yeah. Especially those lower weight classes where age is amplified. Yeah, exactly that. So I think it's just more defenses. And segueing into that conversation as a whole, please riddle me this. Why in the world did I go on my phone this week and see rumours that they're trying to make Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez? Riddle me this.
I did see that, but I thought it was just a fleeting thing. Has that actually got weight to it?
I don't know what the conversations are behind the scenes. I haven't been privy to any whispers. But it wouldn't shock me. It really wouldn't shock me with the fact that Yair is a fun style, he's relatively well known, he's obviously got a big backing in regards to these countries, coming off a win. But what? I couldn't think of a fight I want to see less in the featherweight division. I'm not saying that wouldn't be a decent fight. I'm just thinking, for what point? What reason is there to do that? We've already seen the outcome. There is, quite honestly, nothing to build a narrative around that. They don't dislike each other. There's no animosity. There's no friction. He's already lost. And if you look at the featherweight division, I actually think...
It's an easy fight there to make, in my eyes.
Call me... It's Movsar Evloev.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually suggesting for Yair, I would have said Diego Lopez. It's an absolute no-brainer considering the drama between the two and their camps. Their trajectories are lining up perfectly. That is the fight to make for Yair, but certainly not Volkanovski, I would agree.
Or there's one more.
Arnold Allen is where I feel like you're about to say.
I don't know if he's fresh and ready to go and in camp and whatnot, but there's a big name that's been forgotten at featherweight. Aaron Pico.
Oh, yes. I completely forgot about him. Has he actually made his debut yet? No. He hasn't.
Not yet.
That's exciting.
And I'll be honest, I'd heard the name a lot. I'd even seen a couple of performances through highlights here and there when he was in Bellator. But I'd be lying if I said that I knew his full history. And I watched the podcast with him and Henry Cejudo and Kamaru Usman. And oh my goodness, I did not know what we had on our hands getting Aaron Pico in the UFC. I didn't quite realise this boy's credentials. I didn't quite realise how skilled he was.
I'm not the most well-versed myself, and neither are probably the people listening. He's the new kid on the block. Tell us.
He's a lot more than just the new kid on the block. He is
in the UFC
a
context, I should say.
serious talent. So he was essentially on the Olympic books for the wrestling. So that speaks to the level. And again, I don't remember the ins and outs completely, but I know that his wrestling is Olympic caliber. Henry Cejudo's speaking about him as being one of the most exciting wrestlers at that time. So a phenomenal record in wrestling, Olympic caliber, and then essentially a lifelong boxer, and then just has phenomenal boxing ability as well. So now you've got someone that's just a lights out wrestler and an incredible boxer. And if you look at his record, I think he's got a loss or two, not more than that. But he came onto the scene early. He decided, I believe, to go straight into professional MMA instead of going into the Olympics. And he got a ridiculous offer. He's very wealthy originally, but he got a ridiculous offer from Bellator. I believe 6 figures in his first ever fight. And he kind of just got speed ran in Bellator. So he was super young, came into the organisation at something like 20 or 21. Yeah, there you go.
Give or take.
And I think he lost one of the early fights. But since then, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
so what's his record
sits with
after
a record
that?
of 13-4, but one of those losses was a shoulder injury. And I don't know the context of that. Could be from a submission, who knows? But the other ones you can definitely confirm. So, I mean, he's very much a kill or be killed fighter. Those other 3 losses, all via TKO, KO, and submission. But what I will say is when you were describing him, if you didn't tell me the name, to me, it sounded like you were talking like Ilia Topuria. You know, big, stocky wrestler with the knockout power. I mean, dangerous. And if he's anything like that, man, then I'm there to watch, absolutely. I mean, his finishing pedigree certainly speaks to it. Very few decisions on his record, as I said, win or lose. And last 2, both coming via knockout. And now, yeah, UFC debut. Very exciting. That's a great shout. But, you know what, you're right. I was about to make the argument. Would you say maybe a bit too soon to push him that quickly? But why not? Why not?
No.
Especially in the time where the UFC needs it, right? This has been such a big topic of debate about the lack of stars in the UFC. Eddie Hearn was making it vocal when he was talking to Ariel Helwani. I was talking about it in my video that I'm currently working on. And it's just generally been in the cultural zeitgeist of mixed martial arts is that the UFC is on a decline because Dana White and the big 3 letters have to be bigger than any fighter. It's just paramount. That's the route they're going down. And I feel to maybe shed that skin in any potential, you've got to push some new names in there. You've got to get people invested early. And the best will always find a way to win, regardless of if they're being thrown into the deep end. And if Aaron Pico wants to do that, you know, he has to win. He has to surpass. And I like the idea of that. I can't lie. Yair Rodriguez, Aaron Pico, I'm there for it.
And also, just make the Volk Evloev fight. I think that's a bit of a no-brainer, to be perfectly honest. I'm all up for. I'm the first person to remind everyone I know you're nodding your head, but I'm the first person to remind everyone this is an entertainment business. I'm the first person. But it gets to a point where it's also a meritocracy and it is also a sport. There's a line, right? There is a line. And I give way more leeway than most people. I'm happy to say business, meritocracy. And I mean, for Evloev, not only has he done enough, the timing is just perfectly suited to him now, because there's not another option which would be a more exciting fight and would make more sense business-wise. So that's why I'm more than happy for him to be next. And also, I'm actually just thinking from a Volkanovski fan's perspective as well. That is you asked, what does he have to do to surpass Jose Aldo? That would do it. He has to do this. Yeah. He has to go against an 18-0 undefeated Russian who's just been going past everyone. I was going to say steaming through the division, but that would suggest that he's just... him.
I'm dying on that hill. I think Arnold Allen won that fight. Yeah.
But this is the thing, right? But this is the thing. He didn't, and he does such a good job of winning, and it doesn't always look the prettiest because the scorecards can sometimes get messy, and you'll be sat there on a Sunday morning saying, no, it was 1-3, and no, it was 2-1, and whatever else. But he just has a way to win. And that's why I think it's interesting against Volkanovski, because he is the best problem solver in MMA. He really, really is. He is one of the most cerebral fighters. He is someone that is going to be able to compete with you in the grappling. He is going to be able to compete with you in the striking, if not lead the dance in that regard. So
that's what I would say. I agree. A lot of people seem to write that off with regards to Evloev striking. This is what I mean. I mean, when it comes to fighters that people with a general consensus don't like or have a particular disdain for, Bilal Muhammad is probably the best example of this. And he, in a lot of ways, followed the same trajectory, right? Was denied the title shot for a long time, finally got his chance and very much took it. Yeah. But the reality is, when it comes to guys like him and Evloev, people like to ignore or deny some of their best attributes, you know, outside of the obvious, right, with the wrestling. Guys like Evloev, his striking is seriously underrated. Very, very good. People just don't want to admit it. And it might not be the most exciting to watch, but it's fundamental, it's simple, and it does the job. And honestly, I think he could have a lot of success on the feet against Volkanovski. And I hate to say that. I don't like that those words are coming out of my mouth, considering how big of a fan I am of Volk. But it's the truth, and this game spares absolutely no one. So I think it's a very tough fight. And in a lot of ways, as you said, for Volkanovski to, you know, pip Aldo's legacy, a win over Evloev would just be phenomenal, especially at this stage of his career. I think that might just about do it.
Tom Aspinall, Alex Pereira.
In what context? Legacies or just as a fight? Who I think is going to win?
I just think that's the next fight to make.
No, it's not. I mean, it's kind of... I put it this way. The way I would describe something like that is it's a nuclear option. It's if the UFC decide, right, fuck it, we've got nothing else... The only way that fight happens is if they strip John Jones. That's the only way. They're not going to do that for an interim title or for no title at all.
No, but that's what they have to do. He's at a point now where we have to strip him. Like he gets stripped. Of course.
But equally, I was thinking about this today, considering what Jones has been tweeting about today and over the last real week or so, really just poking the metaphorical UFC bear, right? Yeah, he's ruffling some feathers, fully intentionally. We know what he's doing. But what I started to realise, and I hate the fact that this is true. Yeah, maybe. What you reckon?
Do I reckon? When he went to Bangtao MMA seminar in Thailand, I actually thought this anyway. Without speaking to anyone, I thought this when I saw the footage. Because obviously I know a lot of people that work there. I know a lot of people that obviously run the gym, and then a lot of people that frequent there anyway and just create content around the gym. So I was seeing a ton of footage when he went there and did his seminar. I remember thinking this in live speed myself. And then in regards to he looked out of shape, and I mean out of shape. I don't mean he didn't look like he was in fight camp and firing on all cylinders. No, I mean he looked legitimately out of breath walking and just sweating a lot and did not look good. And then I got feedback to say that apparently he rocked up crazy hungover and just kind of swanned in. Obviously it's absolutely packed. Swanned in, showed some simple techniques.
Some elbow thing, wasn't it? Yeah, I remember the clip
I saw
of it, or
that,
something.
but I think it was like a really, really rudimentary sort of single leg or something. Can't remember what someone said. And then basically signed a couple of photos and left, and everyone was kind of looking around a bit like, apparently on the warm-up or what. No, apparently on the warm-up, he was kind of like, it was one of these kind of ones, you know? It was like a couple of star jumps, and apparently they could just see him thinking on the fly, and it just weren't that great, I was told by a few people. So, and I'm not saying this to hate, I'm just saying that mate, if you are a certain way inclined and you go to Thailand, you will be on the strip. You will be on the strip until the early hours. They have every opportunity to do infinite activities of debauchery. Infinite. It's actually...
You're not wrong.
You actually have to go out your way to avoid it. So if you're that way inclined, you will find it. And John Jones is most definitely that way inclined. So sorry, I can't remember what you were saying, but I had to. No,
I was saying the harsh reality of all of that. With all of that considered, John Jones is still the man with all the leverage. He is, because the UFC want to make this fight just as much as we want it as fans. And the reality is, you need John Jones to agree to sign it, to agree to sign that contract. So they are holding out. They're just waiting because they don't want to strip Jones. As I said, when we're talking about the Pereira potential fight being a thing, that's the nuclear option. It's not the one they want to pick, but it's the one they will if they absolutely have to. And that only comes to fruition. It is, in my opinion, because it only comes to fruition. They what?
They pick Cyril Gane instead.
Oh, God. I mean, that would be a fun fight. I actually like that fight.
Would it?
But I think John Jones would finish him pretty easily. I think he'd take him down and work him. Maybe probably even knock him out, actually, to be honest with you. But
oh, you mean Tom?
Oh, I thought Aspinall Gane. I mean, that fight's just been in general zeitgeist for a while,
but
right?
you said John Jones.
Oh, did I? I meant... Sorry. Yeah, my bad. I mean, Aspinall Gane, as to correct myself, is what I meant. That's a fun fight, I think, standalone, on its own, without context. But within the context of the division and where we're at, I mean, you're not picking that, are you, really? This is what I mean. Everyone wants this fight, including Dana White. I think he probably wants that fight more than anyone, in a lot of ways. And because it's going to make a shit ton of money, especially they need a fight like that now. They definitely need it, especially in a time where they're looking at potential new broadcaster partnership. They want to have a fight which can prove that, hey, we've got a lot to offer you here. Jones Aspinall is unequivocally that fight. So in that regard, Jones has all the leverage, in my opinion. And that sucks, but it's true. It is.
Well, maybe that's something to consider as well. Maybe there's some part of the UFC that are reserving that to use as leverage, as a bargaining chip to a Netflix or a Amazon Prime or a whatever it may be, right? To a broadcaster and say, listen, we've got this contract softly signed. Let's put it on your channel. But I've concluded it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's never happening. Every day that passes, I'm gonna be real. I don't hold any hope anymore because I'm always optimistic. I'm always optimistic, very optimistic. I thought Conor was coming back until a couple of months ago.
Yeah, definitely now.
No, 100% not. But the more I think about it, the more I think, where would the hold up be? There wouldn't be any hold up. There couldn't be anything that happens from now until some other ambiguous day which would make him go, bless you, which would make John Jones go, oh, actually, no, I will take that. The UFC have offered big money. That's a fact. They've offered big money. They've definitely offered close to 30 million, I would guess.
You reckon? I don't know.
At worst, 20 mil. At worst, 20 mil. Because that's probably what he was getting paid roughly, not too far from that anyway. He's probably getting about 15 million a fight if I was just completely guessing. So they'll probably say, yeah, 20 million. Sweet. All right, cool. They'll probably do that. And then they'll probably work it out where they'll give Tom a slight raise in a flat fee and say, right, okay, well, maybe won't give you pay-per-view points or something like that. I'm just guessing here, but trying to even it out. I don't think it's a money thing at all. I really don't. The way that the UFC are talking, it just doesn't align. So my question to you is, what would it possibly be? Like Tom is not gonna fight again if John says oh, I have to wait for him to see another one. We can't do that. We actually cannot do that. It doesn't matter. This is the problem. People think this is a John Jones thing. No, this isn't a John Jones thing. This is just a champion A versus interim champion B. I talked about meritocracy in business earlier. It's just the fact of, okay, the sport just functions like this. If you have a champion and an interim champion, they fight each other. It's not really that convoluted. So what could possibly be taking place for him to then go in the next month, 2 months? Oh, actually, no, you know what? I will do that. Tom's only getting better, and John's only regressing.
Yeah, I agree. That exactly. Every day goes by, as you said.
Physically.
We're just further and further away from the fight actually happening. But it's a tricky thing to say because, again, I don't want to take John Jones' words with any sense of truth, because I don't particularly. But he did tweet saying that the UFC know my plan. They know what my plan with the belt is, or what he plans to do with regards to fighting, and they haven't announced it yet. That's what he was insinuating on Twitter today. And with that in mind, I have no idea what that could be. He's probably just poking the bear, to use the phrase earlier, as I said earlier. I truthfully don't know. I mean, I generally do think he's afraid of losing. People might disagree, saying, "Oh, it's John Jones." Yeah, it's obvious, secret, isn't it? He's getting paid enough. He has enough money.
Like, what else would it be? It's like
exactly.
It's stupid
I don't know. It's just hard not to be annoyed just at how
what
this
else
is going.
could
I think
it be?
what the reality is, I don't know. I don't think there is anything else.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure it out. You know, I think what the reality is, the UFC needs to just grow some balls and strip the man. Accept the fact he's playing you like a fiddle. That's what I was thinking. I don't know what Jones's end game is, though. Like, I don't understand it. Because if you're doing this to promote, that's one thing. With the goal of having the fight down the line, we maybe considered that an option, like last year or even a few months ago. We're at this point now where this fight probably isn't happening at all. If we're being real and we're being honest. So what is the end game for Jones here? Because it doesn't serve his own interests in how people view his legacy the longer he keeps doing this and putting up this act, if he's not going to fight. So I don't really know what his plan is. I don't think anyone really knows what John Jones, his plan is, or how his mind operates. Take what?
The fight.
If I was Jones? I mean, I don't blame him. It's Tom Aspinall we're talking about.
No. What would you do? That's not what I'm asking. What would you do?
Okay, fair enough. You're really pushing it here. Okay.
Because I know what I would say.
In Jones' position, yeah, I probably wouldn't take the fight. It's not in my interests, in both legacy-wise and probably even financially-wise. Yeah, you'll make a lot of money, but you already got a lot of money. So, again, some people's mindsets are different. Some people think it's never enough. So, money aside, it's a legacy thing. I wouldn't want the potential of my legacy being ruined, especially at this stage of my career where I am very much past my prime, and I'm well aware of it too. And I'm going up against, quite literally, by definition, if you're looking at the stats, the most dangerous fighter in the UFC. I understand it. But then do the right thing and just fuck off. Like, to excuse my French, but there isn't really a better term to use there. Just depart the sport, depart the division, and say, yeah, fair enough. I'm old. My body's old. You know, it's not my time anymore. Here you go, Tom. Undisputed champion. Go fight Sorgon. Go chart your legacy and go do what you need to do and what you deserve to be doing. His prime is being wasted, and it's killing me. It's killing me.
And then just wait until Tom Aspinall loses and go, see, told you.
I've lost you there for a minute. I have no idea what you said. You went full robot there for that sentence.
I said, and then you just sit back and you wait until he loses and say, see, told you, not as good as you thought.
Oh, God. That thing is, that's what Aspinall was saying when he fought Curtis Blades. He was praying that Blades would beat him so he could say, I told you so. But honestly, by the time Aspinall loses, in my opinion, or by the time he starts to actually regress and decline in this sport, I think he would have been and done everything he needs to do to be one of the greats. So that is if he's actually able to get a fight and chart his legacy as he deserves to do so. God, it's such a frustrating fucking situation.
Yeah, I'm bored of that whole saga, though.
Aren't we all? I'm sure Jones is. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand. There's no winners here. There's no winners to this situation. No one is coming out of this better. Quite literally, no one. Jones's legacy, as I said, by holding on to this belt and by doing nothing, he's actively hurting his legacy and how people will view him when all is said and done. I think if he just was honest about it and said, I don't want to take the fight, I don't think people would be that much up in arms about it down the line. But doing what he's done and delaying and holding up the entire division and one of the best heavyweights on this planet, that will leave a much more lasting mark. People say, yeah, you were scared. You really were scared and you didn't want to take the fight. And that's, I mean, only Jones, maybe he doesn't give a shit. I mean, why would you, to be fair? I mean, he's done everything he needs to do in the sport. Undefeated, two-weight champion. Most people regard him as the greatest of all time. What's a few naysayers going to do? A couple of loud vocal people on Twitter, right? Nothing. So, that's what I'm saying. He's in the driver's seat. It comes back to what we said, right? He can do quite literally whatever he wants here. He has all the leverage. We're using that term in a slightly more negative light here today, but it's true. It's true.
It's true. It's true. I'm over it, to be perfectly honest. I really am. Even as someone who I made infinite pieces of content around it, I'm just fully over it. So before we sort of round off in sort of maybe 10 minutes, what else is on the MMA hotbed?
There was actually something. Go on. Sorry. No, go.
No, I was just going to say, I think we've got to take a second to have a little discussion about 170 Nungdoe Jet Sip, because that division, that's the best division in the UFC right now. I don't think there's much debate there. If you're debating it, I'm ready to go to war with you about it, because you're wrong.
I'm going to gauge my opinion just looking at the top 15 right now.
No, you're wrong.
No, I think you're right. I agree.
It's objectively true. It's not even subjective.
That's
it's 100% the best division.
Top 15. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you look at it, usually what you have with weight classes is scattered throughout. You got the veterans who are starting to tip on their way out and they eventually get replaced, right? When you look at the majority of the welterweight division, top 15, yeah, there are a couple of guys like that. I'd put Gilbert Burns in that bracket, as harsh as it is to say, and obviously Stevie Wonderboy Thompson. But that shows you the level. It's still Gilbert Burns.
He's done out these days, isn't he?
Yeah, he's done. But there's no shame in that. Time comes for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Same as a guy like Wonderboy. But you look at everyone else in that list. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, when you've got MVP at 15th, Carlos Prates at 13th, those are two, in my opinion, guys striking who can hang at the very, very top level. I mean, they've very much proven it. Obviously, I know Prates on a loss against Ian Gary, who also we have to mention. That man is championship caliber. Joaquin Buckley, very much championship caliber. Kamaru Usman, one of the greatest welterweights of all time. Leon Edwards, another esteemed welterweight champion with a great resume as well. Shavkat Rakhmonov, who is undefeated. He is still undefeated, is he not? Yeah. Nearly lost to Ian Gary, should I say. And of course, Sean Brady and Bilal Muhammad. And we haven't even mentioned the newly minted champion, Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, it is
Michael Morales.
Insane. Michael Morales, of course, who absolutely steamrolled Gilbert Burns. That was the most easiest predict of a first-round finish. I don't know why I didn't bet on it. I said it when I was talking to a few guys out of jiu-jitsu. Yeah, 100%. Burns' chin, in my opinion, has never been good, and it's only going to get worse, and it has proven to have gotten worse. And a guy like Michael Morales has great finishing instincts. I don't think his chin's ever been stellar. He's always been dropped quite a few times throughout his career. Doesn't take a lot to put him down. To finish him, maybe, but to put him down doesn't take a lot, in my opinion. I mean,
I suppose he was coming off a TKO loss. I suppose he was coming off a TKO.
Might have to drop him with a jab.
Yeah.
And that as well.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I just didn't see him getting bulldozed like that, as not at all, but not as easy as that. It didn't really look like. Now, I wouldn't want to be standing there taking those shots from someone with an 80-inch reach and 25
Jesus,
and a
freakish
pep in his
build.
step. Yeah, serious athlete. But I'm just used to seeing Burns flipping.
Dog it out.
War dogging it through those. Yeah, war dogging through those sort of spots. And then maybe not having the best rounds, but at least staying safe. But kind of just looked like the first onslaught, he was kind of done. Yeah, he was kind of done. It looked like a career had caught up and said, okay, one too many. I don't think he quit. I don't think he checked out. I think it was just the fact that his body just said, no, can't do this anymore. And we're not going to do this anymore. And I think now he's reserved to the sort of legendary matchups only. Leon Edwards, I think, is the fight there.
That's a fun one. That's a nice sort of tune-up one. It's mad to call that a tune-up fight at this point, isn't it? It is, but it's true. There's no disrespect there. I'm a big fan of Gilbert. I think he's one of the best. If you talk at the guys he's fought throughout his career,
definitely disrespect there.
Stacked. No, it's not at all. It's just the nature of the beast. You know what I mean? Everyone becomes a tune-up fight eventually. Usman will be a tune-up fight in a couple of fights. That's just the reality of it. And he's one of the greatest welterweights to ever grace the sport. But it's just the case with time. And Leon Edwards is, only 32, 33, still edging between his prime and probably exiting it now. Burns is very much past that point, and he just doesn't have the durability. As I said, it's his body, it's the mileage, everything just giving up on him, really. And against a guy like Michael Morales, who's in the ascendancy, on that trajectory he's on, I mean, that fight was always going to go one way. But I think that is probably a nice little place to wrap it up of this episode, slightly shorter one of the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 103, or might be 4 even. I have to double check. But thank you very much for listening, and we will see you pretty soon.
Sam.
Have a good one.